Alright, we're going to begin with our city street corner here, and I'm going to go through some of the first couple steps to get your city based in, to figure out a sidewalk or a street, and then discussing how these buildings can fit within. So your first step is always going to be to put your horizon line on your page. I would suggest starting with your horizon line maybe a little bit lower than center, because you're probably going to be looking up at a lot of these buildings. So if you have it a little bit lower than the center, you're going to have some more space to have some taller buildings up here. So my horizon line is going to be drawn here. You'll want to draw it pretty light, because eventually you're going to erase this for the most part, because your buildings will cover it up and you're not going to want to see this line between your buildings. But if you remember, this horizon line represents your eye line. So anything below, you're looking down at, anything above, you're looking up at. So most buildings are, the top of them is going to be above your eye line. In the example that I showed you before, you're looking a little bit down on the front building. So if you want to imagine that you're looking in from across the street and you're up in a balcony, second story, this kind of gives you an eye line where you can see a little bit of things that are lower, but most of it's going to be above. So to start your sidewalk, my suggestion would be to figure out where you want your corner. So we're going to go in about the middle of the page. You don't have to measure it and make it exact, but I'm going to just make a little mark here at about the middle. And from there, we're going to draw a vertical line, a really small vertical line, and this is going to represent the height of your sidewalk, because the sidewalk is three-dimensional. It's going to have length, width, and height. So when we start off with two-point perspective, you usually begin with that front corner. So that's what we're going to start with here too. So from the top and bottom of our sidewalk height, we're going to take that all the way back to both of those vanishing points. So that is done here, and we'll do it on the other side as well. And this is going to create the outer edge of your corner. Okay, so from there, now we have some thickness to our sidewalk. So your next step is going to be to decide like how wide you want your sidewalk to go. So the front is really going to be a square. So if you want to line up with your little mark here and have a corner directly above that, that's going to keep these even and square looking as you go back. So if you line up here, give yourself a little dot, that's going to give you something to start with to make a straight line. So again, you're going to use your vanishing points. We're going to go from our little space there back to the vanishing point on the left. I'm going to draw all the way through until I get to our lines that we started with for our sidewalk. Now crossing over this same intersection here, we're going to bring it to the other vanishing point, draw that line across, and now we have our front square of the sidewalk. So to finish that off, we do need to have some vertical lines that show the edges of that. So I'm going to bring that down, and on the other side as well. So that gives us the front corner to the sidewalk. Once you've finished that, and you're going to add these different lines coming back to create the other squares, I'm not going to make you measure them to be exact. There are ways to do that, but for our sakes here, we're just going to kind of eyeball that. So if you want to measure or line up your ruler with one of your vanishing points and create these lines going to your vanishing point going back, and really if you look at it, just try to make sure that they're getting a little bit closer together as you go back so that it keeps it kind of consistent. If you leave a lot of space between these boxes as they go back, it's not going to look like they're the same size. So this is something you have to just go a little slow, pay attention to what you're doing, and work from there. Once you've drawn these in and you get to the back, or towards the back, they're going to get really close together, and it's almost to the point where you don't even see that much space between them anymore. Notice I'm leaving my ruler on the one vanishing point, and I'm just pivoting the ruler a little bit each time so that they're all going to that vanishing point. So back here we can't even see them anymore because the sidewalk's so close together. So a good way to keep these consistent from one side to the other, if you use your ruler, find your corners here. So I have a corner of each of these squares going back. If I line my ruler up, keep it nice and straight, either line it up with the edge of your paper and slide it up, or line it up with your horizon line and slide down. Every time you get to one of those little corners, you don't have to draw all the way across the paper, but if I have a corner right here, that means on this side, I'm going to have a corner at the same place. That's going to keep them nice and even going forward so that they look the same on both sides. Alright, so now these little dots that we made, we can line up the ruler with that, bring it over to this vanishing point over here, and we will have our lines for this side of the sidewalk. Alright, now we have the lines separating those squares for the sidewalk. So the last step for your sidewalk is to make the little vertical lines coming down as we had in the front. We'll just slide this back, keeping that ruler nice and straight, just like the edge of the paper. If you are turning your ruler a little bit, you'll notice that you have more space between your ruler and the edge or less space. That means you need to realign that so that you are drawing nice, straight, vertical lines. And at some point you can't really see them anymore, so you don't have to draw them anymore. Okay. So there's our sidewalk for the front of our street corner.